Social Security plays such an important role for most retirees that it's really important to keep our eyes open for possible changes that could happen to it in the future. Now, one interesting way that we can do this is we can actually look and see what other countries are doing and see if, some of the things that they're doing might end up happening in some way, shape, or form here in America. Now, if you've been watching the news much lately, you may be aware of the demonstrations that are happening in France, where the government is trying to raise the eligibility age from 62 to 64 for them to be eligible to start drawing their version of Social Security. And it's very politically unpopular, to say the least. Some of the reasons that could be contributing to this would be like economic challenges. One thing that they cite is that there's been low birth rates, that young workers might not be able to sustain pensions for retirees. In other words, there's not enough young people working and paying a tax and paying into the system in other words in order to support the people that are drawing the pension right now. So they're taking steps to try to shore this thing up and keep the program alive, but doing that's very painful and it's having political repercussions. Now, France isn't the only place that's had this. Spain is one also. And this is just a few weeks, this is a few days before this article than the one on France. And they didn't have to raise their retirement age to 65 this time. They've been able to keep it at that for right now. But what they decided to do was to increase the costs for higher wage earners. So that's oftentimes a strategy: find out who's making more money and take more of it from them in order to keep the program alive. Nobody likes to hear that, but that's kind of what goes on. Now, what's important to us, whatever goes on over there across the Atlantic, that's not America. So, what do we need to be thinking about this? Well, we have to keep our eyes open and see there are actual concerns with Social Security. This is from the Social Security and Medicare boards of trustees. They put out this annual report every year. This year, and I've highlighted it in yellow, the trust fund will be able to pay 100% of total scheduled benefits until 2033. That's 1 year earlier than it was reported last year. In other words, last year, when the trustees put out the projections, they said, hey, we can make it all the way to 2034. But this year, when they look at the projections again, it's actually, we can't make it that long, 2033. And then at that time, based on projections of people that are continuing to work, paying into the Social Security system, those dollars go to people that are on Social Security. Those current taxed dollars would be able to support about 77% of the benefits that people are receiving from Social Security. Now, I'm not like a doom and gloom kind of guy when it comes to the system is going to completely die. I don't really think that's realistic. I think it's too politically popular, as we can see in these other countries where there's this backlash when they try to make changes to it. And just the idea of somebody, it's 2033, they were receiving 100% of their Social Security benefit, and then the next month they took only 77% is what they received. They took a 23% pay cut, essentially, on their Social Security that was coming into their bank account. That is a highly politically unpopular thing to see that happen. So I think there's probably going to be some tweaks to it and some changes that happen to the system. And it wouldn't be the first time that that's been done. Back in 1983, they put some provisions in place into Social Security to raise the full retirement age up from 65 and then inch it up to age 66 and then again to 67. Now, they did it in a really smart way, though, because back in 1983, none of those provisions started affecting anybody until the year 2000. So, I mean, we're talking about 17 years down the road. That's why we don't remember the riots of 83 that were people rioting in the street over Social Security, any of that kind of stuff. And some of the reasons that they did this, that they had cited that there was the people had more longevity. The average life expectancy was one of the primary reasons that they were having to do this. Now, this does a couple of things for the Social Security program. It allows them to pay people less benefits if they draw early at 62. If your full retirement age is 65, but you decide to draw 3 years earlier, there's a calculation that they would have put in place to say we're reducing it down for 3 years worth of early withdrawal, and it's going to always be reduced down to that lower amount. Sure, you'll have the inflation increases and all that, but you took a reduction by drawing early. Well, if your full retirement age was 66 and you decided to draw at 62, that's 4 years of reduction. So that's an even steeper reduction, and that means less that they have to pay out to make sure the system kind of stays alive. And then when they raise it up to 67 and you draw at 62, then of course that's 5 years of a reduction as well. But it also works on the flip side too, because if you delay after your full retirement age from say 66 to 70, that's 4 years of earning additional credits for delaying. But if you do it at age 67 to 70, you only get 3 years. So it kind of on both ends of the spectrum, they were able to make reductions in the benefit, but they did it in a way that was politically acceptable, so to speak. Now, what are some other things they could do? They could do things like how Spain is doing and just taxing high wage earners at a higher rate. One kind of low-hanging fruit right now is they could just increase the amount of wages that are subject to Social Security tax. As it is right now, for the year 2023, only the first $160,200 that people earn in wages is subject to the Social Security tax. If they wanted to make the net bigger and capture more wages that would pay this tax, they could just up that number, to whatever they project that they need it to be in order to keep the system going, so to speak. So that's something that could be done as well. Now, why this is so important as you're planning for your retirement, I'm not thinking that your Social Security benefits are going to be taken from you if you're already drawing it or anything like that. But I do think that it stands to reason that with the increase of people that are getting onto these social programs, it's going to be more and more important for the government to figure out ways to raise taxes. And one way that they can do that is that they're going to be looking at low-hanging fruit like IRAs, 401ks, things that have not had any tax paid out of them yet. So if you're looking at your financial picture, what's a really good exercise to do is just to break up your retirement savings and all of your savings into 3 categories. I like to think of as taxed now, taxed later, and then the other one tax-free on the growth side. So whatever you put into it, it can grow to whatever and not pay tax on. So your tax now, those are your non-qualified accounts, or if you have a joint account with you and your spouse or somebody else, it's a non-qualified account if you're receiving a 1099 each year. So let's say you have money in a bank CD, it earns interest, the bank sends you a 1099, you give that to your accountant and you pay tax on that interest income. Let's say you have a stock that's not inside the shelter of any retirement account and it pays a dividend, you get a 1099 for that, you give it to your accountant at the end of the year, you pay tax on the dividend that you were paid. That's the taxed every year account. The accounts that we're really familiar with, like tax later, you would recognize that as like your 401k, or if you're a federal employee, your TSP, or traditional IRAs. When you put money into those, under almost every circumstance, you were able to tax defer it, take a write-off on your income taxes by doing it. But when you start pulling money out of it, that's when you have to start paying tax on that. And if income tax rates go up in the future, then what you think you have as a lump sum, let's say you have an IRA or a 401k of 500,000, if they raise taxes, you really don't have that full 500,000. You've still got to pay Uncle Sam when you pull it out. And if they raise taxes in the future, then that means he's just going to take a bigger slice of your retirement savings. And then lastly, you have the Roth accounts. The growth in them is tax-free. You don't get a tax write-off when you put the money in, but whatever it grows to, if you follow the rules, it's all tax-free on that. So even if they raise tax rates in the future, that's not going to impact the Roth accounts because they're tax-free on their withdrawals already. So this is something you really need to think about when you're looking at your retirement. And I think it's really good to look at what's happening in other countries on things that are related to wages and how they are taxed for their Social Security programs over there. Be thinking about things that you can do to maybe take funds that are in your tax later accounts and doing Roth conversions, paying the tax now if you're in a lower tax bracket, just for example, right? So just some things to think about as we kind of keep our eye on what's going on in other parts of the world. And if you feel free to head on over to the website retirementplanningmadeeasy.com. If you want to get some more retirement resources, you can download a free copy of the Essential Step-by-Step Retirement Guide. That's going to give you more information on planning for your own retirement. And I'll see you guys on the next video.